What does Jesus' parable have to say about the soil of your soul? That's what we're talking about today on Byte-Size Theology. Hello and welcome to Byte-Size Theology. My name is Philip Nelson. We are continuing in Mark for our summer reading challenge of 2022. Today we are reading Mark chapter 4, and for our time here, we'll be focusing on Jesus' parable talking about the soil of your soul. Now, Mark chapter 4 essentially has three main segments. First, Jesus tells the parable of the sower and then explains it, chapter 4 verses 1 through 20. And then second, Jesus tells three successive parables, chapter 4 verse 21 through 34. And then third, Jesus calms the storm, chapter 4, verse 35 through 41. Today's reflection is going to be focusing on Jesus' explanation of the parable of the sower. Now, Jesus begins his parable by introducing a sower who went out to sow. We see this in verse 3. And he seems like a rather inefficient sower as the seed falls all over the place. But the focus is not so much on the sower. It is more so on the types of soil upon which the seed is falling. Some seed falls on the path, and the birds come and eat it. Some seed falls on the rocky ground with a little bit of soil. The seed springs up and quickly does so because there's not much room for any roots to grow deep because the soil is so shallow. But when the young plant faces the harshness of the environment, it withers in the sun because it had no root. Some seed falls among thorns. While the seed did grow, the thorns grew also, and they choked it out. Some seed falls into good soil, and it grows up and increases, and it yields a tremendous crop. Now, after telling the parable, when Jesus is alone with the 12, they begin to ask him about the parables. As we move on into the explanation, I want to point out two thoughts. First, I do not think that it is without significance that Jesus gives this explanation of the parable to the 12 apostles. For in just a couple of chapters, in chapter 6, these men will be sent out to proclaim the word in villages and towns. Their job will be to sow that seed far and wide, and their response will depend on the soil. And this indeed is an encouragement. There are times that you can labor with all your might, plead and pray for the people that are around you to understand the word. But the result is not up to you. Be faithful then to sow the seed. But let me not get too far ahead of myself. Second, this parable is not only for the leaders, but also should give us pause to examine our own lives. What is the soil of your soul? So let us examine Jesus' explanation. Jesus makes this parable plain and the understanding very easy. The seed being sown is the word. Now, we've seen this term used before in Mark chapter 2, verse 2, where there was a large crowd that was gathered around Jesus, and there was not room in the building, not even at the door. And it says that he was preaching to them the word. Jesus says this of those along the path. Whenever they hear the word, Satan immediately comes and snatches it up. Now, never underestimate the spiritual battle that is occurring when the word is being shared. Of those on the rocky ground, they received the word with joy. However, they have no root in themselves, chapter 4, verse 17, and thus they wither away when they encounter persecution and tribulation on account of that word. Two things to consider. 1, receiving the word with joy, while it is very good, is not a guarantee of an enduring faith. Second, it is not the fault of the word when someone falls away. Rather, it is due to the shallowness of the soil in their soul. So, is the word growing deep in your heart, my friend? What will become of your faith when persecution or tribulation comes to your life on account of this word? Those are questions that I need to ask myself. Next, of those among thorns, they hear the word, but according to Jesus, three things choke out that word. First, the cares of the world. Second, the deceitfulness of riches. And third, desires for other things. These things don't really need much explaining, but let me ask you this. What kind of things in your life or in this world are consuming you? Or more specifically, if I were to ask you how your time in the Word has been, if you are intentionally seeking to grow deeper in your walk with God, what kind of things will you list as reasons why you are too busy? My friend, that's convicting to me. Friend, what kind of thorns in your life are choking out the Word? Now notice that last phrase in verse 19. The choking of the Word proves it unfruitful. What fruit is being born in your life? That leads us directly into that final section. Of those among the good soil, they hear the Word, they accept it, and they bear fruit. This is almost exactly what Paul says in Colossians chapter 1, verse 6. He says that from the day that the Colossian Christians first heard the gospel and second understood the grace of God, it has third been bearing fruit and increasing. So my friend, as we conclude this reflection, what kind of soil are you? If there was ever a time to examine your heart, let it be today. What must you and I be doing to be growing? And I think it's clear from these verses what we must do. First, we must tend to the roots. Is the Word of God growing deep in my heart, wrapping its tendrils around every corner, leaving no part of my thought life, my emotional life, or any other hidden parts of my life, leaving no part unaffected? How are you making strives to do this? Are you hearing the Word and keep on hearing? Are you accepting the Word and keep on accepting? Are you doing what it says? So second, we must tend to the fruit. The more the Word grows in us, the more our lives will reflect that Word. But we must be ready and willing to put it into action. We must be ready and willing to put into action those very things that Jesus is teaching us. So, my friend, have you read Mark chapter 4 yet? Which of Jesus' parables stuck out to you? What kind of soil do you see in your own soul? And what ways can you be bearing fruit today? Let me know in the comments below. If you have not already, please join us in the summer reading challenge. Please check out the description for more information. I want to say thank you so much for joining me today on Byte-Size Theology. Until next time, my friends, may our great and gracious God grant you focused, faithful, and fruitful time in His Word. We'll see you over in the next episode.